Imagine standing before an ancient stone structure, its purpose lost to time, its builders long gone, yet their creation still whispers secrets we can't quite decipher. That's the thrill of history's greatest unsolved mysteries. They tug at our curiosity, daring us to uncover the truth. Take the Voynich Manuscript, for example, a book filled with strange symbols and bizarre illustrations, written in a language no one has ever been able to decode. For centuries, cryptographers, historians, and even code breakers from world wars have tried to crack it, yet it remains one of history's most stubborn enigmas. How could something so meticulously crafted still defy understanding after all this time? This is just one of the countless historical puzzles that continue to baffle experts today. From vanished civilizations to inexplicable artifacts, the past is littered with riddles that refuse to be solved. Some of these mysteries challenge our understanding of human ingenuity, while others hint at events so strange they border on the unbelievable. What really happened to the settlers of Roanoke who vanished without a trace, who built the intricate Antikythera Mechanism, a 2,000-year-old device often called the world's first computer? These aren't just footnotes in history, they're gaps in our knowledge, taunting us with questions that may never have answers. Today, we're diving deep into 30 of history's most perplexing unsolved events. Each one is a story unto itself, a snapshot of a moment where the historical record goes silent, leaving us to piece together the fragments. Some of these mysteries might make you question everything you thought you knew about the past. Others will leave you wondering if we'll ever find the truth. But one thing's for certain, by the end of this journey, you'll see history not as a neatly wrapped package, but as an endless maze of secrets waiting to be uncovered. So, are you ready to step into the unknown? Let's begin. The year was 1587 when English settler John White returned to Roanoke Island after a desperate trip to England for supplies. What he found, or rather what he didn't find, would echo through history as one of the most haunting disappearances in the New World. The entire colony, including his own granddaughter Virginia Dare, the first English child born in America, had vanished. No bodies, no signs of struggle, just an eerie silence and a single clue carved into a wooden post, the word Croatoan. At first glance, it seemed like a straightforward message. The Croatoan were a nearby native tribe, and some speculated the settlers had gone to live with them. But why leave no trail? Why abandon their homes without a trace? Over the centuries, theories have spiraled, some plausible, some bordering on folklore. Could the colonists have been slaughtered by hostile tribes, their remains lost to time? Did they attempt to sail back to England and perish at sea? Or perhaps they integrated so completely with local tribes that their European identities vanished from history. Archaeological digs have turned up fragments, a 16th-century English signet ring, European-style pottery hidden among Native American villages, but nothing definitive. Even the location of the lost colony remains debated. Modern researchers pore over old maps and soil samples, searching for any clue that might crack this 400-year-old cold case. The mystery only deepens when you consider the political tensions of the time. England and Spain were at war, and Roanoke sat vulnerable, a potential target for Spanish raids. Yet no records from Spain mention an attack. Perhaps the most enduring question isn't just what happened, but why it's haunted us for so long. Roanoke isn't just a historical footnote, it's a story of human fragility, of a community erased overnight. Every new theory, from droughts to disease, feels like peeling back another layer of a puzzle we may never solve. And that word, Croatoan, lingers like a whisper across the centuries, daring us to keep looking. The Voynich Manuscript sits in a vault at Yale University, its pages filled with looping, alien handwriting and illustrations of plants that don't seem to exist. Since its discovery in 1912 by Polish book dealer Wilfrid Voynich, this bizarre text has defied every attempt at translation, earning its reputation as the world's most mysterious book. At first glance, it appears to be a scientific or herbal guide, hundreds of pages of delicate drawings showing strange flora, celestial charts, and even tiny nude women bathing in what looks like green liquid. But nothing about it adds up. The plants are unidentifiable, the astronomical diagrams don't match known constellations, and the text itself, a cipher so complex that even the best codebreakers, including those who cracked Nazi encryption in World War II, have walked away baffled. Theories about its origins are as wild as its contents. Some believe it was crafted by 15th century alchemists, hiding secret knowledge in plain sight. Others argue it's an elaborate Renaissance hoax designed to deceive wealthy collectors. Radiocarbon dating places the vellum between 1404 and 1438, but that's one of the few solid facts we have. Even the script itself behaves unlike any known language. Its symbols follow statistical patterns closer to real linguistics, yet no one can find a key. What makes the Voynich Manuscript so frustratingly unique is how close researchers have come to breakthroughs only to hit dead ends. In 2019, a computer scientist claimed artificial intelligence had decoded snippets as a form of Old Hebrew, but the translation made little sense. Earlier, a historian suggested it was a phonetic transcription of medieval Latin, yet the theory collapsed under scrutiny. The manuscript mocks logic. Its words repeat in odd rhythms like poetry, but without any discernible meaning. Perhaps the most tantalizing clue lies in its illustrations. One section, dubbed biological, depicts interconnected tubes and orbs resembling human organs centuries ahead of anatomical accuracy. Another shows zodiac symbols but with unfamiliar constellations. Could this be a lost branch of science, a dying scholar's private code, or is the truth simpler, an elaborate joke that outlived its creator? Centuries later, the Voynich Manuscript remains a riddle wrapped in parchment. It challenges our assumption that every language can be decoded, that every historical artifact yields its secrets eventually. Maybe that's why it captivates us not just as a puzzle, but as a humbling reminder that some mysteries refuse to be solved. In 1901, sponge divers exploring a shipwreck off the coast of Antikythera, a tiny Greek island, stumbled upon a corroded lump of bronze and wood that would rewrite history. What they'd found wasn't just another ancient artifact, it was a 2,000-year-old mechanical marvel now known as the Antikythera Mechanism. When archaeologists carefully pried apart its encrusted layers, they uncovered a complex system of interlocking gears, precisely cut and arranged in ways that shouldn't have existed until at least the 14th century. This wasn't merely a clock or simple calendar. The device could predict solar eclipses, track the 4-year cycle of ancient athletic games like the Olympics, and model the erratic movements of planets with startling accuracy. Its dials and inscriptions revealed an understanding of astronomy that rivaled, and in some ways surpassed, the knowledge of medieval Europe a millennium later. The craftsmanship was so refined that tiny teeth on some gears measured barely 1 millimeter across, requiring precision tools historians didn't believe the ancient Greeks possessed. Who built this technological masterpiece? The leading theory points to the workshop of Archimedes or his followers in Syracuse, where ancient texts mention similar devices. Cicero once wrote about a bronze instrument made by Archimedes that reproduced the motions of the heavens, but the Antikythera Mechanism predates those descriptions by decades, suggesting its origins may be even more obscure. The ship carrying it likely sank between 70 and 60 BC, possibly en route from Rhodes to Rome as war plunder. Rhodes was a hub for astronomical study, home to the famed scholar Hipparchus, whose theories about the moon's motion appear etched into the device's brass plates. What truly baffles researchers is how such advanced engineering knowledge vanished for centuries. After the Antikythera Mechanism's era, technology regressed. Medieval astrolabes were crude by comparison. Some speculate the mechanisms were state secrets, their builders killed during Rome's conquest of Greece. Others believe the devices were so rare that when libraries like Alexandria burned, the knowledge died with them. Modern X-ray scans have revealed hidden inscriptions, a sort of user manual etched into the metal, confirming it could calculate celestial events decades in advance. One dial even accounted for the irregular orbit of Mercury, a detail not mathematically formalized until Kepler in the 17th century. How did ancient Greeks achieve this without telescopes or advanced mathematics? The mechanism forces us to reconsider the technological sophistication of the ancient world, not as primitive, but as a civilization capable of genius we're only now beginning to comprehend. The Antikythera Mechanism remains a humbling reminder that history isn't a straight line of progress. Sometimes brilliance flares brightly only to be lost for ages, leaving behind fragments that challenge our assumptions about human innovation. As we continue deciphering its secrets, one thing becomes clear: the ancient world may have been far more modern than we ever imagined. In July 1518, the streets of Strasbourg became the stage for one of history's most bizarre and terrifying phenomena. It began with a single woman, a Frau Trophia, who stepped into the square and began dancing. Not the joyful, rhythmic movement of celebration, but a frantic, involuntary convulsion. She couldn't stop. Within days, dozens more joined her, their bodies writhing without music, without rest. By month's end, nearly 400 people were caught in the grip of this uncontrollable frenzy, dancing until their feet bled, until they collapsed from exhaustion or worse. Some danced themselves to death. At the time, panic spread as quickly as the dancing itself. The city council, desperate for answers, consulted physicians and clergy. Some blamed hot blood, suggesting the dancers needed to sweat out the madness, leading to the surreal decision to build a wooden stage and hire musicians, as if encouraging the dance might cure it. Others saw divine punishment or demonic possession, but what really caused this nightmare? Modern scientists have grappled with the mystery for decades. One leading theory points to ergot poisoning, a fungus that grows on damp rye and produces chemicals similar to LSD. In medieval Europe, contaminated bread could trigger hallucinations and involuntary muscle spasms, symptoms that align eerily with the accounts from Strasbourg. Yet skeptics argue that ergot poisoning typically causes gangrene and burning pain, not coordinated, days-long movement. Another explanation leans into mass psychogenic illness, a form of collective hysteria where stress and fear manifest as physical symptoms. Strasbourg had been plagued by famine, disease, and relentless hardship in the years before the outbreak. Could the dancing have been a desperate, unconscious release of societal trauma? Similar episodes, though smaller, appear throughout history, like the Tarantism of Italy, where victims danced wildly, believing spider bites compelled them. But the Strasbourg event stands apart in its scale and severity. Unlike isolated cases of hysteria, this was a city-wide crisis with participants spanning ages and social classes. Some contemporary accounts describe onlookers being infected just by witnessing the dancers, as if the compulsion were contagious. The chilling truth is, we may never know for certain. The dancing plague of 1518 defies easy categorization, part medical anomaly, part psychological riddle, part dark folklore. It forces us to confront how little we understand about the human mind under extreme duress, and how easily reality can unravel when fear takes hold. 5 centuries later, the image of those desperate, ceaseless dancers lingers, a haunting reminder of history's capacity for the inexplicable. Early on the morning of June 30th, 1908, in a remote part of Siberia near the Tunguska River, a blinding light streaked across the sky, followed by an explosion so powerful it registered on seismic stations across Europe. The blast flattened 80 million trees over 800 square miles, an area nearly the size of Tokyo. Windows shattered hundreds of miles away, and night skies as far as London glowed eerily for days. Yet when scientists finally reached the site 19 years later, they found no crater, just a vast, scorched expanse of trees knocked sideways like matchsticks, radiating outward from a mysterious epicenter. What could unleash such devastation without leaving a trace? The leading explanation points to a cosmic intruder, a meteor or comet fragment exploding in Earth's atmosphere with the force of 12 million tons of TNT. The heat and shockwave would mimic a nuclear detonation, explaining the flattened terrain. But skeptics question why no debris was ever found. Comets are icy, and meteors typically leave fragments, yet expeditions turned up nothing conclusive. Some researchers speculate the object disintegrated entirely, vaporizing at 5 miles above the ground. Others argue it wasn't a space rock at all. Enter the wilder theories. A handful of enthusiasts point to Nikola Tesla, who was experimenting with high-energy transmissions around the same time. Could his Wardenclyffe Tower, an early wireless power project, have accidentally unleashed an energy beam toward Siberia? Tesla himself claimed his technology could split the world in half, though most scientists dismiss the idea as pure speculation. Then there's the more fringe possibility of a miniature black hole passing through Earth, a cosmic needle leaving no exit wound, though no evidence supports this. The Tunguska Event's enduring mystery lies in its contradictions. It behaves like an airburst meteor, yet defies expectations for such events. Witnesses describe bizarre atmospheric effects before the explosion, including multicolored skies and strange clouds. Some indigenous Evenki people reported seeing a second sun moving erratically. These details feed theories of something even rarer, like a chunk of antimatter annihilating upon contact with our atmosphere, a phenomenon we still can't reliably detect. More than a century later, Tunguska remains a benchmark for planetary defense. Had the explosion occurred over a major city, the death toll would have been catastrophic. Yet the very lack of physical evidence keeps debates alive. Modern simulations suggest the object was likely a stony meteorite 60 meters wide but without remnants. We're left with calculations, not proof. It's a humbling reminder that some of history's most monumental events leave only questions in their wake. Plato's tale of Atlantis begins like so many ancient myths with a warning. In his dialogues Timaeus and Critias, written around 360 BC, he describes a powerful island kingdom beyond the Pillars of Hercules, blessed with advanced technology and unimaginable wealth. But its people grew arrogant, provoking the gods to punish them in a single day and night of misfortune, sinking Atlantis beneath the waves. What sets this story apart is Plato's insistence that it wasn't fiction, but a real event passed down through generations. For over 2,000 years, that claim has fueled expeditions, theories, and outright obsessions. So where was Atlantis if it existed at all? One of the most compelling theories points to the volcanic island of Thera, modern-day Santorini. Around 1600 BC, a cataclysmic eruption, one of the largest in human history, shattered the island, wiping out the sophisticated Minoan civilization on nearby Crete. The parallels are striking: a thriving maritime empire, sudden destruction, even the concentric rings of Thera's caldera mirroring Plato's description of Atlantis's capital. But critics argue Plato placed Atlantis in the Atlantic, not the Mediterranean. Could his details have been distorted over centuries of retelling, or was he blending multiple disasters into one morality tale? Then there's the Bahamas hypothesis. Off the coast of Bimini, divers have found odd underwater rock formations dubbed the Bimini Road, which some believe could be remnants of man-made structures. Satellite images of the region reveal geometric patterns that resemble city grids, fueling speculation of a sunken metropolis. Yet geologists insist these are natural limestone formations shaped by tides over millennia. The search took a stranger turn in the 1960s when psychics like Edgar Cayce claimed Atlantis would rise near Bimini in 1968 or 69, a prediction that, unsurprisingly, never materialized. What makes Atlantis uniquely frustrating is how plausible it feels. Ancient civilizations did vanish without a trace. Think of the Indus Valley cities or the Mayan collapse. The world's oceans remain 95% unexplored. Who's to say ruins don't lurk in the depths, but without physical evidence, even the most detailed theories crumble. Plato might have invented Atlantis as an allegory about hubris, or perhaps he was preserving a half-remembered account of a real disaster, like the flooding of Doggerland in the North Sea 8,000 years ago. The enduring allure of Atlantis lies in its ambiguity. It's a blank canvas for our imaginations, a lost utopia, a cautionary tale, a puzzle waiting to be solved. Every new sonar scan or archaeological find reignites the debate, but until someone dredges up a street sign that reads, "Welcome to Atlantis," the legend will keep drifting between history and myth, forever just out of reach. On a calm December morning in 1872, the crew of the British ship Dei Gratia spotted a vessel drifting eerily near the Azores. As they approached, they realized it was the Mary Celeste, a fully seaworthy brigantine with its sails partially set, cargo intact, and even a hot meal left uneaten on the table. But not a single soul was on board. The captain, his wife, their 2-year-old daughter, and 7 seasoned sailors had vanished without a trace. The lifeboat was missing, yet there was no sign of struggle, no water damage, and no logical reason why experienced mariners would abandon a perfectly sound ship in the middle of the Atlantic. The mystery only deepened when inspectors examined the scene. The ship's logbook, updated just days earlier, noted nothing amiss. A sword was found under the captain's bed, but with no bloodstains or evidence of violence. Barrels of alcohol in the hold were untouched, ruling out mutiny over stolen liquor, a theory that had gained traction in sensational newspaper reports. Even the crew's personal belongings, including watches and valuables, remained in their quarters, making piracy seem unlikely. So what could have driven them all overboard? One of the most plausible explanations centers on the cargo, 1,700 barrels of industrial alcohol. When investigators found several barrels empty, some speculated fumes might have built up, causing the crew to fear an imminent explosion. In a panic, they could have launched the lifeboat, only to be lost at sea when the ship failed to blow. But skeptics point out that no one smelled alcohol vapors when boarding, and the Mary Celeste showed no signs of fire or chemical damage. Others propose a sudden waterspout or seaquake, an underwater earthquake generating massive waves without warning. Such an event might have terrified the crew into abandoning ship, only for the sea to calm moments later, leaving the vessel unharmed. Yet no seismic activity was recorded in the region at the time. Then there's the more chilling possibility of a rogue wave or a freak meteorological event, like a sudden microburst of wind, capable of creating chaos without leaving physical clues. The Mary Celeste's legend grew thanks to wilder theories, from sea monsters to alien abductions, but the truth likely lies in the mundane horrors of the maritime world. Perhaps a faulty chronometer led the crew to believe they were closer to shore than they were, prompting a disastrous evacuation. Or maybe a loose hatch cover, mistaken for structural damage, triggered an overreaction. Without survivors or a distress message, we're left with only fragments, a ship frozen in time, a half-eaten meal, and the unsettling silence of empty cabins. What makes this mystery endure isn't just the unanswered questions, it's how perfectly it captures the ocean's uncanny power to erase stories. The Mary Celeste wasn't a ghost ship, it was a functional vessel, a floating testament to human presence that became, in an instant, a cipher. Every new theory, from methane bubbles rising from the seabed to undetected hull leaks, only underscores how fragile our understanding of history can be when the witnesses are gone. And so the ship sails on, not through water, but through our collective imagination, forever drifting between fact and folklore. For decades, the residents of Taos, New Mexico, have reported an unsettling phenomenon, a persistent, low-pitched hum that seems to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. Described as a faint droning, like a distant diesel engine idling, the Tao's hum is audible only to a small percentage of the population, yet for those who hear it, the sound is inescapable. It creeps into bedrooms at night, lingers in the corners of quiet spaces, and resists all attempts to trace its origin. Some liken it to a rumbling vibration in the bones rather than a noise in the ears. Investigations into the Tao's hum began in earnest in the early 1990s when frustrated locals demanded answers. Teams of researchers from universities and government agencies descended on the town, armed with sensitive audio equipment. Yet their findings only deepened the mystery. No measurable sound waves matched the descriptions. Microphones picked up nothing unusual, leaving scientists baffled. If the hum wasn't an external sound, what was causing it? One camp of experts points to industrial sources like power lines, gas pipelines, or underground drilling. The region's geology, with its network of natural caves and underground springs, could amplify distant vibrations, turning faint industrial noise into a localized disturbance. Yet, no one has ever pinpointed a specific facility or activity that aligns perfectly with the hum's reported timing or intensity. Then there's the psychological angle. Some researchers propose the hum could be a form of auditory pareidolia, the brain's tendency to interpret random noise as meaningful patterns, like hearing voices in static. Others suggest it might be a type of tinnitus, where individuals perceive sound without an external source. But why would this affect only certain people in one geographic area? Studies have shown that hum hearers often share similar physiological traits, like heightened sensitivity to low-frequency vibrations, but the puzzle remains incomplete. Perhaps the most compelling theory involves infrasound frequencies below the range of human hearing, which can still produce physical sensations. Natural events like microseisms or even atmospheric disturbances might generate these inaudible waves, resonating differently in the high desert landscape of Taos. There's precedent for this. Infrasound from wind patterns and ocean waves has been linked to unease and even paranormal experiences in other parts of the world. Yet, despite decades of scrutiny, the Tao's hum defies explanation. It's a phenomenon caught between science and subjectivity, a sound that might not even be a sound at all. For those who hear it, the hum is as real as the ground beneath their feet, a constant companion that refuses to be ignored. And so the question lingers: is it a geological whisper, a neurological quirk, or something else entirely? Until someone finds a way to measure the unmeasurable, the hum will endure, a quiet reminder that some mysteries resonate far beyond the reach of our understanding. Deep in the basement of the National Museum of Iraq sits a collection of unassuming clay jars, each about the size of a fist, with a curious design. Found during an excavation near Baghdad in the 1930s, these artifacts date back to the Parthian Empire around 2,000 years ago. But what makes them extraordinary isn't their age or craftsmanship, it's what they might have been used for. Inside each jar, archaeologists found a copper cylinder housing an iron rod, all sealed with asphalt or bitumen. When filled with an acidic liquid like vinegar or grape juice, these vessels could produce a small electric charge. The discovery sparked a bold question. Had ancient civilizations stumbled upon battery technology millennia before modern science? The first person to suggest this radical idea was German archaeologist Wilhelm Koenig, who studied the jars in the late 1930s. His experiments showed that the setup could generate around 1 volt of electricity, not enough to power a light bulb but sufficient for subtle electroplating. This led to a tantalizing theory. Perhaps Parthian goldsmiths used these Baghdad batteries to apply thin layers of gold or silver onto jewelry or religious artifacts. There's precedent for such ingenuity. Ancient Egyptians were known to electroplate objects using natural chemical reactions, though without understanding the underlying principles. Yet not everyone accepts the battery hypothesis. Skeptics argue that no electroplated objects from the era have ever been found. nor do contemporary texts mention anything resembling electrical experiments. Some propose the jars had a more mundane purpose, storing sacred scrolls, with the iron and copper acting as protective elements against moisture or pests. Others suggest they were used in religious rituals, perhaps delivering mild shocks as part of initiation ceremonies or healing practices. The bitumen seals could have simply been a way to keep volatile liquids from spilling. The debate takes an even stranger turn when you consider the absence of wires or conductors among associated artifacts. Without a complete circuit, how would ancient users have harnessed the electricity? Some researchers speculate that the knowledge might have been lost or suppressed, like the Antikythera Mechanism's advanced mechanics. Alternatively, the batteries could have been accidental discoveries, curiosities that never evolved into practical technology. What keeps the mystery alive is the sheer simplicity of the design. Anyone could have stumbled upon the basic principles by chance, mixing common materials in the right way. Maybe that's the real lesson here, not that ancient people had our modern understanding of electricity, but that human curiosity has always pushed boundaries, even when the full implications remain just out of reach. The Baghdad batteries stand as a quiet challenge to our assumptions about technological progress, whispering that the past might hold far more surprises than we've dared to imagine. So were they batteries, storage vessels, or something else entirely? Without a time machine, we may never know for sure. But that's the beauty of historical puzzles like this. They force us to reconsider what we think we know and remind us that history isn't a straight line of innovation, but a tangled web of brilliant, fleeting ideas, some lost to time, others waiting to be rediscovered. Stretching across Peru's arid Nazca Desert, a series of enormous, cryptic designs cut into the earth have left archaeologists and historians scratching their heads for nearly a century. These are the Nazca Lines geoglyphs, so vast they can only be fully appreciated from the air, yet crafted with such precision that their existence defies easy explanation. From towering humanoid figures to geometrically perfect spirals, from a hummingbird with wings spanning over 200 feet to a spider so accurately rendered that scientists can identify its species, these ancient artworks raise one glaring question. How and why did a civilization from 2,000 years ago create something meant to be seen from a perspective they could never achieve? The sheer scale of the Nazca Lines is staggering. Covering nearly 200 square miles, the glyphs were made by removing the reddish-brown iron oxide-coated pebbles that cover the desert, revealing the lighter-colored earth beneath. The contrast creates stark, enduring images that have survived for millennia thanks to the region's minimal rainfall and stable winds, but the real mystery lies in their precision. Without the ability to fly, how did the Nazca people plot out such intricate, large-scale designs? Some researchers suggest they might have used simple grids, scaling up small models with ropes and stakes, a technique seen in other ancient cultures. Yet even this theory struggles to explain the geometric perfection of shapes like the giant trapezoids, some stretching over half a mile, with sides so straight they rival modern laser measurements. Then there's the question of purpose. One of the earliest and most persistent theories ties the lines to astronomy, suggesting they functioned as a massive celestial calendar. Certain glyphs align with the solstices or the positions of stars, like the famous astronaut figure, which some argue points to the Pleiades constellation, a star cluster deeply significant in Andean cosmology. But not all the lines fit this explanation, leading others to propose they were part of religious rituals, perhaps pathways for ceremonial processions or offerings to deities believed to dwell in the sky. The desert itself was considered sacred, and the act of creating the lines might have been as important as their final form. A darker theory suggests the lines were linked to water, a precious resource in the arid landscape. Some glyphs follow underground aquifers, and the shapes of animals like the hummingbird or the monkey could symbolize rain-bearing spirits in Nazca mythology. Archaeologists have found wooden stakes near the lines that might have been used in dowsing rituals to locate water, adding weight to this idea. But perhaps the most haunting possibility is that the lines were meant to be seen not by humans, but by the gods themselves, a desperate plea for survival etched into the earth, visible only from the heavens. Modern technology has only deepened the enigma. Satellite imagery and drone surveys continue to uncover new glyphs, some hidden for centuries under layers of dust. In 2019, researchers using artificial intelligence identified 143 previously unknown designs, proving how much remains undiscovered. Yet with every new find, the central mystery persists. What compelled the Nazca to invest such incredible effort into something they could never fully witness? The Nazca Lines stand as a testament to human ingenuity and the enduring drive to connect with forces greater than ourselves. They challenge our assumptions about ancient capabilities and remind us that some creations transcend practical explanation, serving instead as bridges between the earthly and the divine. Whether maps, prayers, or messages to the cosmos, their true meaning might remain just out of reach, etched not only in the desert but in the timeless human desire to be remembered. On August 15, 1977, an Ohio State University radio telescope scanning the skies for extraterrestrial signals picked up something extraordinary, a 72-second burst of noise so powerful and unusual that astronomer Jerry Amon circled it on the printout and scribbled, "Wow," in the margin, giving it its now iconic name. The signal came from the direction of the constellation Sagittarius, blazing at a frequency of 1,420 MHz, a band where natural cosmic noise is minimal, making it a prime target for artificial transmissions. What made the WOW signal so electrifying was its intensity, 30 times stronger than the background radiation of space, and it matched the exact profile scientists expected from an interstellar beacon. For a brief moment, it seemed like humanity might have just overheard a cosmic hello. Yet as quickly as it appeared, the signal vanished. Despite decades of follow-up scans, including Amon's own repeated attempts, it was never heard again. The Very Large Array in New Mexico, the Allen Telescope Array in California, and even modern projects like Breakthrough Listen have all trained their antennas on that patch of sky, but silence reigns. This absence of repetition is what fuels the debate. Was the WOW signal a fleeting message from an advanced civilization, or just an incredibly rare celestial fluke? The extraterrestrial hypothesis remains compelling. The signal's narrow frequency range and sudden drop-off resemble what we'd expect from a directed transmission, like a laser beam briefly sweeping past Earth. Some speculate it could have been a one-time beacon from a dying civilization or a malfunctioning probe drifting through space, but critics counter that no known natural process can explain the signal's purity. Hydrogen, the most common element in the universe, emits at a similar frequency, but it doesn't concentrate energy so sharply or disappear without a trace. Alternative theories veer into the cosmic and the terrestrial. One camp suggests it might have been a reflection, a human-made satellite signal bouncing off space debris or a passing comet. In 2017, researchers proposed that comet 266P/Christensen, which happened to be transiting the area in 1977, could have amplified and redirected radio waves from Earth. But follow-up observations failed to replicate the effect. Others point to military experiments or classified spacecraft, though no declassified records support this. What makes the WOW signal so haunting is its singularity. Most cosmic phenomena leave patterns, repeating pulsars, predictable quasars. This was a scream in the dark, heard once and never again. It challenges our assumptions about how often intelligent life might broadcast detectable signals, if at all. Maybe it was a statistical inevitability, a 1 in a billion alignment of natural noise. Or perhaps it really was a deliberate transmission, and we just weren't listening at the right moment to catch the reply. The WOW signal endures as a tantalizing what if at the heart of the search for extraterrestrial intelligence. It's a reminder that the universe is vast enough to hide countless secrets, and that even our most advanced tools might only brush against the edges of understanding. Until another signal comes, or until we uncover a definitive natural explanation, that red-inked "wow" on Eamon's printout will keep staring back at us, daring us to keep looking up. In a dimly lit chapel in Turin, Italy, a single piece of ancient linen draws millions of pilgrims, scientists, and skeptics alike. The Shroud of Turin, a 14-foot-long cloth bearing the faint, haunting imprint of a crucified man, has been called both the most sacred relic in Christianity and one of history's most elaborate hoaxes. To believers, it's the burial shroud of Jesus Christ, its eerie image miraculously seared into the fabric during the resurrection. To critics, it's a medieval forgery, crafted with techniques we've yet to fully understand. But what makes this artifact so endlessly contentious? The debate begins with the shroud's most striking feature, the ghostly negative image of a bearded man with wounds matching the gospel accounts of Christ's crucifixion: lash marks, a pierced side, even what appear to be nail wounds through the wrist. Forensic pathologists have noted how the bloodstains align with gravity, suggesting the image formed while the body was wrapped in the cloth. Botanists point to pollen grains embedded in the fibers, some native to Jerusalem, hinting at Middle Eastern origins. But the real firestorm erupted in 1988, when radiocarbon dating by 3 independent labs placed the shroud's creation between 1260 and 1390 AD squarely in the medieval period. Yet this conclusion only sparked more controversy. Researchers soon questioned the sample's validity, noting it might have come from a repaired section rather than the original fabric. Later studies highlighted inconsistencies. The shroud's unique weave resembles 1st-century Jewish burial cloths found near Jerusalem, not medieval European textiles. Chemical analyses revealed traces of strontium nitrate and iron oxide substances used in ancient dyes and medicines, but also compounds that could skew carbon dating. Some scientists even proposed the image resulted from a rare form of radiation, possibly emitted during a resurrection event, though no known natural process explains it. Art historians add another layer to the puzzle. If the shroud is a forgery, how did a medieval artist achieve such anatomical precision? The image isn't painted but appears as a delicate discoloration of the topmost fibrils, with no pigment penetrating deeper. Modern attempts to replicate it using acids, heat, even primitive photography fall short of its subtle detail. Even Leonardo da Vinci, living just a century after the shroud's alleged fabrication, couldn't have produced such a three-dimensional effect without advanced optics. The shroud's defenders point to a 2,000-year-old coin minted under Pontius Pilate, discovered tucked inside the cloth's weave in high-resolution scans. Skeptics counter that the image could be a vachetta, a medieval rubbing made from a sculpture or corpse enhanced by centuries of veneration. And then there's the matter of the shroud's historical silence. No clear record of it exists before the 1300s, when it surfaced in France under suspicious circumstances. Was it hidden for centuries or crafted to capitalize on the era's relic trade? Perhaps the shroud's greatest power lies in its ability to defy certainty. It exists in the liminal space between faith and science, a riddle that resists tidy answers. For every study disproving its authenticity, another emerges to challenge the consensus. Modern 3D mapping reveals the image behaves like a perfect distance map, something no medieval forger could conceive, let alone execute. Yet until someone can explain precisely how the image formed or unearth definitive 1st-century documentation, the Shroud of Turin will remain suspended between miracle and mystery, a silent witness to the past that refuses to surrender its secrets. What lingers isn't just the question of its origin, but why this artifact captivates us so deeply. Whether divine or devised, the shroud forces us to confront the limits of our knowledge, how even in an age of quantum physics and genetic engineering, a single piece of linen can still leave us humbled, staring into the face of the unknown. For centuries, a stretch of ocean between Florida, Puerto Rico, and Bermuda has been shrouded in whispers of vanishing ships, phantom planes, and forces beyond human understanding. This is the Bermuda Triangle, a name that conjures images of swirling ocean fog and vessels swallowed whole by some unseen hand. But beyond the urban legends, what's really happening in these infamous waters? The law took hold in the mid-20th century with a string of high-profile disappearances. Flight 19, a squadron of 5 U.S. Navy bombers, vanished without a trace during a routine training exercise in 1945. Rescue planes sent to search for them also went missing. Then there's the SS Marine Sulphur Queen, a tanker that disappeared in 1963, leaving behind only a few life jackets. These cases, amplified by sensational headlines, painted the triangle as a portal to another dimension, or worse. But science offers far less fantastical explanations. Beneath the triangle's waves lie vast deposits of methane hydrates, pockets of gas trapped in ice-like formations. When these destabilize, they can erupt in massive bubbles, reducing water density so suddenly that ships lose buoyancy and sink within seconds. Laboratory experiments confirm this phenomenon, showing how a vessel caught in a methane plume could plunge without warning or distress signals. Then there's the fury of the ocean itself. The triangle sits in the path of the Gulf Stream, where warm and cold currents collide, spawning rogue waves, walls of water towering over 100 feet tall. These freak waves, once dismissed as sailors' tales, are now known to capsize even the sturdiest ships. Combine that with the region's unpredictable microburst storms, and you have a recipe for maritime chaos. Even the skies here deceive. The Bermuda Triangle is one of few places where magnetic compasses point to true north rather than magnetic north, a quirk that could disorient pilots before modern GPS. Add in the rapid weather shifts common to subtropical climates, and it's no surprise that navigation errors pile up. Yet the mystery persists because humans are wired for pattern seeking. We connect unrelated events into narratives, especially when the alternative is acknowledging how fragile we are against nature's whims. The Bermuda Triangle isn't a supernatural vortex. It's a reminder that the ocean, for all its beauty, remains one of Earth's last untamed frontiers, where even today ships and planes can vanish without explanation. The real enigma isn't what's lurking beneath the waves. It's why we'd rather invent monsters than face the awe-inspiring power of the natural world. In February 1959, a group of 9 experienced hikers trekked into the snowy expanse of Russia's Ural Mountains, never to return alive. When search teams finally reached their abandoned camp on the slopes of Kholat, known ominously as Dead Mountain, they uncovered a scene so baffling it would ignite decades of speculation. The tent had been slashed open from the inside, as if the group fled in terror. Footprints led away into the snow, some barefoot, others clad only in socks. And then the bodies scattered across the frozen terrain, some with crushed ribs, one missing a tongue, others dressed in fragments of clothing ripped from their own bodies. This was the Dyatlov Pass incident, a tragedy wrapped in layers of horror and mystery. One of the most widely accepted explanations points to avalanches. The hikers had pitched their tent on a slope prone to shifting snow, and recent research suggests a rare slab avalanche could have struck without warning, forcing them to cut their way out in panic. The blunt force trauma seen on some bodies aligns with avalanche injuries, and the delayed onset of hypothermia might explain why they stripped clothing, a paradoxical response to extreme cold as the body's temperature regulation fails. But skeptics note the absence of classic avalanche evidence like packed snow or debris, and the odd positioning of the bodies, some found uphill from the tent. Then there's the infrasound theory. The area's unique geography, wind funneling between peaks, could have generated low-frequency sound waves inaudible to humans but capable of inducing primal terror and disorientation. Experiments show infrasound can trigger feelings of dread, even hallucinations, which might explain why the histers fled into sub-zero temperatures without proper gear. But if infrasound drove them mad, why didn't it affect other groups who later camped nearby? The darkest theories involve military experiments. Declassified documents reveal Soviet missile tests in the region around that time, and some victims' clothing showed traces of radiation. Conspiracy theorists suggest the hikers stumbled upon a secret test, perhaps a parachute mine or directed energy weapon, and were silenced. Others propose they witnessed a crashed UFO, citing reports of strange orange spheres in the sky that night. Yet no concrete proof of military involvement has ever surfaced, leaving this angle in the realm of speculation. What makes Dyatlov Pass endure isn't just the grotesque details, but the chilling gaps in the story. The official investigation was hastily closed, files were classified, and even modern forensic reconstructions can't account for every wound or the absence of external injuries on some bodies. The hikers' own journals recovered at the scene offer no clues. Their final entries are eerily mundane. Perhaps the truth lies in a combination of factors: an avalanche triggering panic, infrasound amplifying confusion, and brutal cold finishing what nature started. Or maybe, as some researchers argue, we'll never know because the full story died with those 9 hikers on that frozen mountainside, leaving only questions etched into the snow. The Dyatlov Pass incident remains a stark reminder of how quickly the wild can turn from majestic to merciless, and how thin the line between adventure and catastrophe really is. During the late 1960s and early 70s, a shadowy figure terrorized Northern California, taunting police and newspapers with cryptic letters signed with a chilling symbol, a crossed circle resembling a gun's crosshairs. The Zodiac Killer, as he called himself, didn't just leave behind a trail of victims, he left a puzzle. Embedded in his letters were complex ciphers, some solved, others stubbornly resisting even the brightest cryptanalysts to this day. These weren't simple substitution codes or amateur riddles. They were layered, methodical, and in at least one case, seemingly designed to remain unbroken. The first cipher, known as the 408 cipher, arrived in 3 parts to local newspapers in July 1969. It took a sharp-eyed couple, a history teacher and his wife, just days to crack it using basic frequency analysis, revealing a narcissistic manifesto where the killer boasted about collecting slaves for the afterlife. But the victory was short-lived. The very next month, the Zodiac mailed another cipher, this one 340 characters long. Dubbed the 340 cipher, it remains unsolved despite decades of effort from professional codebreakers, FBI cryptanalysts, and amateur sleuths worldwide. What makes these ciphers so infuriating? For one, the Zodiac demonstrated a deep understanding of encryption techniques. He mixed symbols, letters, and even weather icons, creating a hybrid system that defies traditional decryption methods. Some researchers believe he employed homophonic substitution, assigning multiple symbols to common letters like E or T to throw off frequency analysis. Others suspect he embedded personal references or obscure literary allusions, turning the cipher into a psychological maze. Recent breakthroughs have only deepened the intrigue. In 2020, a team of private citizens claimed to have cracked the 340 cipher using a complex key based on the killer's earlier letters. Their solution pointed to a disturbing confession. The Zodiac claimed responsibility for murders never officially linked to him. Yet the FBI and many experts remain skeptical, citing inconsistencies in the decryption method. Without the killer's confirmation or a body, the solution lingers in uncertainty. Then there's the haunting possibility that some ciphers were never meant to be solved. The Zodiac relished attention, and unsolved codes guaranteed his legacy would endure. His final known cipher, the 13-symbol cipher, is just that 13 enigmatic characters mailed in 1974 with the note, "My name is." Was it a final taunt, a genuine clue? Decades later, we're no closer to knowing. Modern technology has brought new hope. Supercomputers running advanced pattern recognition algorithms have scoured the ciphers for hidden structures. Crowdsourced efforts like the Zodiac Cipher Forum pool thousands of minds to test every conceivable angle. Yet the killer's work resists even these collective efforts, a reminder that some puzzles aren't just about intellect, they're about getting inside the mind of someone who delighted in staying one step ahead. The Zodiac ciphers are more than codes, they're a psychological battleground. Every unsolved symbol is a challenge, a whispered dare from the past. And as long as even one remains unbroken, the killer's voice, however twisted, continues to echo across the decades, proving that some mysteries refuse to die quietly. Off the fog-shrouded coast of Nova Scotia lies a small, unassuming island that has driven men to obsession, bankruptcy, and even death for over 200 years. Oak Island's so-called money pit isn't just a hole in the ground, it's a layered labyrinth of engineering genius and psychological torment. The story begins in 1795, when teenage Daniel Maginnis spotted strange lights on the island and discovered a circular depression with an old pulley hanging from a tree above it. Digging down, he and his friends hit wooden platforms every 10 feet, suggesting someone had gone to extraordinary lengths to hide something deep beneath the earth. And then, at 90 feet, they struck the first of the pit's infamous traps, a layer of mysterious coconut fiber and ship's putty, followed by a stone inscribed with cryptic symbols. When they broke through, seawater came roaring in, flooding the shaft, an ingeniously designed booby trap that would become the pit's calling card. What lies at the bottom? Theories spiral from the plausible to the fantastical. Some believe it's the lost treasure of Captain Kidd, the notorious pirate who allegedly hid plunder along the eastern seaboard. Others connect the pit to the Knights Templar, pointing to the island's resemblance to descriptions of their legendary vaults. There's even a wild hypothesis that Shakespeare's original manuscripts were buried there by secretive Baconian societies. But the most compelling clue comes from the pit's construction itself. Core samples drilled in the 1960s brought up tiny flecks of gold and a scrap of parchment, while sonar scans reveal a network of flood tunnels connected to the ocean, evidence of a system far too sophisticated for casual treasure hunters. The real tragedy of Oak Island isn't the lack of treasure, it's the human cost of the hunt. Over the centuries, 6 men have died pursuing the pit's secrets, from drowning in flooded shafts to suffocating in collapsed tunnels. Fortunes have been spent. Dynasties like the famed Ristol family were broken by it. Modern expeditions, armed with ground-penetrating radar and submersibles, have only deepened the mystery. In 2014, divers found a 17th-century Spanish coin embedded in the bedrock, while another team uncovered human bones dating back to the Middle Ages. Yet the pit refuses to yield its prize, swallowing drills, cameras, and hope with equal indifference. Perhaps the greatest trick the money pit ever played was making us believe the treasure was gold at all. Some researchers now think the real value lies in the pit's construction, a time capsule of lost engineering techniques, or even a ceremonial site built to guard something symbolic rather than material. Every shovel that strikes dirt, every sonar ping that echoes back unanswered, keeps the legend alive, because in the end, Oak Island's true treasure might not be what's buried underground, but the unshakable belief that there's still something left to find. One summer day in the 12th century, villagers in the English town of Woolpit made a chilling discovery near the wolf pits that gave the area its name. There, huddled and trembling, stood 2 children with skin the color of moss, clad in strange, metallic clothing. Their speech was unintelligible, their expressions wild with fear. When they were finally coaxed into the village, they refused all food, until someone offered them fresh green beans, which they devoured ravenously. The boy, frail and sickly, soon succumbed to illness. But the girl survived, learned English, and relayed a story that would echo through the centuries. She and her brother came from a place called St. Martin's Land, where the sun never rose and everything was bathed in perpetual twilight. Was this a case of medieval folklore run amok or something stranger? Historians have long debated the Green Children's origins, with theories ranging from the mundane to the extraordinary. One plausible explanation points to Flemish immigrants who faced violent persecution in England at the time. Fleeing their homes, children might have wandered into the region malnourished, their pallor worsened by hunger or an undiagnosed condition like chloroses, a form of anemia that can give skin a greenish tinge. Their metallic clothing could have been rough woven Flemish textile, their odd speech merely a Dutch dialect unfamiliar to English ears. As for their subterranean homeland, Woolpit sat near an old network of mine tunnels. Perhaps the children had been lost in darkness long enough to believe they came from another world. Yet skeptics of the immigrant theory point to inconsistencies. The children reportedly ate nothing but beans for months, something no starving child would survive on. Their aversion to all other food, especially bread, a staple even in famine, hints at something deeper like chronic poisoning. Some researchers suggest arsenic exposure, which could tint the skin green and cause neurological damage, distorting their memories of home. Others propose ergot poisoning from moldy grain, known to cause hallucinations and extreme light sensitivity, fitting the girl's description of a sunless world. Then there's the folklore angle. Tales of green folk appear across medieval Europe, from Celtic myths of fairy children to Germanic legends of subterranean beings. Woolpit's name, tied to wolves, already carried supernatural weight. Could the story have been embellished over time, blending local superstitions with a real encounter? The girl's eventual integration into society, she married a local man, suggests a flesh and blood origin, yet her peculiar account resists easy dismissal. The green children of Woolpit linger in history's shadowlands, caught between record and rumor. Whether refugees, poisoning victims, or something far stranger, their story endures because it taps into our deepest questions about lost civilizations, forgotten languages, and the thin veil between our world and the unknown. 5 centuries later, we're still left wondering, were they visitors from a distant land or messengers from a place we've yet to understand? Deep in the vaults of museums and private collections around the world, a set of hauntingly beautiful artifacts stirs both wonder and controversy: the crystal skulls. Carved from blocks of flawless quartz, these eerie, life-sized human skulls first captured global attention in the late 19th century, when British explorer Frederick Mitchell Hedges claimed his daughter Anna discovered one in the ruins of a Mayan temple in Belize. With its hypnotic clarity and uncanny craftsmanship, the so-called Mitchell Hedges skull became the crown jewel of a growing legend. That these objects were ancient relics crafted by Mesoamerican civilizations with tools and knowledge lost to time. But the truth, as it often does, unravels into something far more complicated. What makes these skulls so mesmerizing isn't just their appearance, it's the stories woven around them. Some enthusiasts insist they're remnants of Atlantis or gifts from extraterrestrials, imbued with psychic energy or the ability to heal. Others point to alleged anomalies. Despite being carved from a material harder than steel, the skulls show no tool marks, as if shaped by some advanced, unknown technology. But science has slowly chipped away at the myth. In the early 2000s, a team of researchers from the British Museum and Smithsonian analyzed several skulls using electron microscopes. What they found was startling. Modern rotary tools had left microscopic traces, consistent with 19th century jewelers' equipment, not pre-Columbian craftsmanship. The smoking gun came in the form of archival research. Tax records and correspondence revealed that many skulls traced back to a single source, a workshop in Germany run by the skilled lapidary Eugene Boben, who supplied curios to European collectors hungry for exotic artifacts. Yet even with this evidence, true believers resist. They argue that not all skulls have been tested, including the Mitchell-Hedges specimen, which remains privately held and off-limits to rigorous analysis. And then there's the unsettling detail that some indigenous oral traditions do speak of sacred crystal skulls long before Bourbon's forgeries entered the scene. Could a handful of genuine artifacts exist lost among the fakes? Perhaps what keeps the crystal skull debate alive isn't just the allure of mystery, but the human desire to connect with something beyond the mundane. In a world where science explains so much, we still crave objects that defy explanation, artifacts that whisper of lost worlds and forgotten magic. The skulls, whether crafted by 19th century con artists or ancient hands, tap into that longing. They challenge us to ask, does their power lie in their origins or in the stories we choose to believe? The quiet Bavarian farmstead of Hinterkaifeck seemed like any other rural homestead in the spring of 1922, until the day it became the stage for one of Germany's most chilling unsolved crimes. Just days before the massacre, the Gruber family, father Andreas, his wife Casilia, their widowed daughter Victoria, and her 2 young children reported eerie disturbances. Footprints led to the house through fresh snow with no tracks leaving. A missing set of house keys turned up in plain sight. The family heard unexplained footsteps in the attic, and Andreas claimed the farm's new handyman, hired only weeks earlier, had vanished without collecting his wages. Then, on the night of March 31st, someone took an axe from the barn and murdered all 6 inhabitants, including 7-year-old Casilia and 2-year-old Joseph, whose tiny skulls were crushed in their beds. The killer stayed for days afterward, feeding the livestock, eating the family's food, even lighting the stove before disappearing into the fog-shrouded countryside. What makes this case so unsettling isn't just the brutality, it's the prelude of creeping dread. Neighbors later recalled seeing smoke from the chimney for days after the murders, as if the killer were taunting them with his presence. Investigators found the barn's latch deliberately oiled to prevent noise, suggesting meticulous planning. And then there were the children's toys, carefully arranged in a way that hinted at someone lingering in the house long after the blood had dried. Suspicion fell first on the missing handyman, a shadowy figure whose name was never verified. Some theorized he was a disgruntled former laborer seeking revenge. Andreas had a reputation for withholding wages. Others pointed to Victoria's estranged husband, Carl Gabriel, though he had an alibi. More chillingly, locals whispered of supernatural forces. Hinterkaifeck stood near an ancient burial ground, and decades earlier, another farmer on the same land had killed his entire family before taking his own life. Was history repeating itself in some twisted cycle of violence? Modern forensic re-examinations have only deepened the mystery. In 2007, a student's thesis proposed the killer was the family's neighbor, Lawrence Schlittenbauer, who'd allegedly fathered Victoria's younger child and stood to inherit the farm. But with no physical evidence and Schlittenbauer never formally charged, the theory remains speculative. Later investigations suggested the murders could have been tied to post-World War I unrest, a veteran unhinged by trauma, or a robber targeting the farm's rumored hidden savings. The case's unresolved nature gnaws at the imagination. Why spare no one, not even the children? Why linger at the scene, risking capture? And most haunting of all, what if the family sensed their fate in those final days as the attic creaked and the snow betrayed no footprints leaving? Hinterkaifeck's farmhouse was razed long ago, the ground salted to prevent rebuilding. Yet the questions remain, as sharp as the axe that fell on that moonlit night, leaving behind only whispers and a puzzle that refuses to fade. In the autumn of 1888, as the streets of London's Whitechapel district ran red with the blood of the Ripper's victims, another kind of terror began arriving in the mail. The first letter, postmarked September 25th and addressed to the Central News Agency, bore a chilling confession in looping, uneven script. "Dear boss, I keep hearing the police have caught me, but they won't fix me just yet." What followed was a gloating account of the murders, signed with the now infamous pseudonym Jack the Ripper. But this wasn't just any killer's note, it was the opening salvo in a psychological game that would forever blur the line between evidence and elaborate hoax. Forensic linguists have spent decades dissecting these letters, searching for truths hidden in the strokes of their handwriting. Of the hundreds sent to police and newspapers during the murders, only a handful are considered potentially genuine, most notably the "Dear Boss" letter, the "Saucy Jackie" postcard confirming the double murder of Elizabeth Stride and Catherine Eddowes, and the horrifying "From Hell" letter accompanied by half a human kidney allegedly taken from Eddowes. The rest, a macabre mix of copycats, journalists fabricating sensational content, and morbid pranksters capitalizing on the panic. What makes the Ripper letters so uniquely unsettling is how they weaponized the media of their time. The "Dear Boss" letter's nickname for the killer was instantly seized upon by newspapers, effectively branding the murderer into public consciousness. Some historians believe the letters might have even influenced the killer's later actions. The "Saucy Jackie" postcard arrived before the double event, almost as if someone was previewing their crimes. But was it the real Ripper or a twisted spectator feeding the frenzy? Modern analysis reveals troubling inconsistencies. The "From Hell" letter, for instance, is written in a crude, barely literate hand starkly different from the more polished "Dear Boss" note. Was this intentional misdirection or proof of multiple authors? Graphologists point out that Victorian handwriting could vary dramatically based on ink, paper quality, and even the writer's emotional state, making definitive matches impossible. Then there's the kidney. While Eddowes' autopsy confirmed one had been removed, no test could verify the grisly package's origin in the 19th century. The letters also offer a rare window into the era's societal anxieties. Their mix of working-class vernacular and theatrical threats played on Victorian fears of urban decay, immigrant communities, and the unchecked violence lurking in shadowy alleyways. Some researchers argue the Ripper's elusiveness was less about criminal genius and more about a police force unequipped for forensic investigation. Fingerprinting was still years away, and bloodstain analysis non-existent. Yet the most haunting question remains: why did the letters stop? After the brutal murder of Mary Jane Kelly in November 1888, the Ripper vanished along with any further correspondence. Was it because the killer died, fled, or simply grew bored? Or had the letters never been from him at all, just a chorus of voices amplifying the terror? Today, the few surviving letters are kept under climate-controlled glass, their ink faded but their power undiminished. They remind us that Jack the Ripper wasn't just a murderer. He was a specter crafted from equal parts blood, ink, and the collective nightmares of a city that never truly saw his face. The letters endure not because they solve the mystery, but because they deepen it. Every stroke of the pen, every taunting phrase, is a thread in a tangled web that still ensnares us. Whether written by the killer's hand or an opportunist's, they transformed a series of ghastly crimes into something far more pervasive, a legend that refuses to die. And in that sense, they achieved exactly what their author, whoever it was, intended: to make sure we never stop looking for answers in the dark. Deep in the misty highlands of 2nd century Britain, 5,000 of Rome's finest soldiers, the legendary 9th Legion, marched into history's fog and never returned. The disappearance of the Legio non Hispana has haunted historians for centuries. One day, they were the iron fist of the Roman Empire, garrisoned at the edge of the known world. The next, they were gone, their very existence wiped from military records as if they'd never existed. What could have happened to an entire legion of battle-hardened warriors in the heart of occupied territory? The most dramatic theory suggests annihilation. The 9th was stationed in what's now York, tasked with subduing the fierce Caledonian tribes in present-day Scotland. Roman accounts describe a massive uprising around 117 AD, with sources like Tacitus hinting at catastrophic losses. Could the legion have been lured into a trap, ambushed in the dense forests or boggy marshes where their famed discipline meant nothing? archaeologists have found evidence of violent clashes, burnt forts, hastily buried bodies, but no smoking gun proving the ninth met its end there. Some speculate the tribes, led by warriors like Calgacus, used guerrilla tactics to pick off the Romans piece by piece until nothing remained. Then there's the relocation theory. A single tantalizing inscription found in the Netherlands references the 9th Legion rebuilding a fortress there decades after its supposed disappearance in Britain. Could the Legion have been quietly transferred to another crisis zone, its fate obscured by bureaucratic chaos? Rome was vast and records were patchy, especially after Emperor Hadrian's decision to abandon northern conquests and build his famous wall. The 9th might have been disbanded in disgrace after a failed campaign, its survivors scattered to other units, its name struck from honor rolls to avoid embarrassment. But the most intriguing clues lie beneath the soil. In 2015, archaeologists excavating a Roman barracks at Helam Bridge in North Yorkshire uncovered a bronze eagle mount, a sacred emblem of legionary pride. Such items were never willingly abandoned. Nearby, they found the remains of soldiers hastily buried without proper rites, some with weapons still in hand. These aren't the orderly graves of a garrison relocating, they're the scars of a sudden, violent end. Yet even here, the evidence is maddeningly incomplete. No mass graves, no definitive legionary seals, just whispers in the dirt. The 9th's fate might hinge on a deeper question: why did Rome so thoroughly erase them? Other legions suffered devastating defeats, yet their histories survived. The 9th's vanishing feels deliberate, as if acknowledging their loss was too painful or too dangerous. Rebellions were contagious, and emperors couldn't afford the myth of Roman invincibility to crack. Perhaps that's the real tragedy, not just the deaths of 5,000 men, but the weight of silence that followed, leaving us to sift through fragments, grasping at shadows in the dark. Rising from the red clay of rural Georgia like something out of a dystopian novel, the Georgia Guidestone stood for over 40 years as one of America's strangest and most controversial monuments. Erected in 1980 under equally bizarre circumstances, this 19-foot-tall granite slab bore 10 cryptic commandments etched in 8 modern languages, a set of instructions for rebuilding civilization after an apocalyptic collapse. The messages ranged from practical, maintain humanity under 500 million in perpetual balance with nature, to the ominously vague, be not a cancer on the earth, leave room for nature. But what made the Guidestones truly unsettling was their anonymity. They appeared seemingly overnight, commissioned by a man using the pseudonym R.C. Christian, who claimed to represent a shadowy group planning for humanity's future. The monument's origins only deepened the mystery. Local banker Wyatt Martin, the only person known to have met R.C. Christian, described him as a well-dressed, articulate man who paid for the massive structure with cash drawn from a Swiss bank account. The precision-cut granite, weighing over 240,000 pounds, was quarried and assembled with technology that seemed unusually advanced for rural Georgia in the late 70s. Stranger still, the stones were astronomically aligned. A small hole drilled through the capstone tracked the sun's solstices and equinoxes, while another slit aligned with the North Star. This wasn't just a message, it was a functional calendar, suggesting its creators had knowledge beyond simple doomsday prepping. Conspiracy theories flourished. Some claimed the Guidestones were a blueprint for global depopulation, pointing to the first commandment's call for a global population under 500 million, a 93% reduction from today's numbers. Others saw occult symbolism in the alignment and inscriptions, linking them to Rosicrucianism or even extraterrestrial agendas. Christian identity groups, meanwhile, denounced the stones as satanic for their multilingual, multicultural approach to governance. The monument became a pilgrimage site for everyone from New Agers to survivalists, all projecting their own fears and hopes onto the granite slabs. Then, in the pre-dawn hours of July 6, 2022, an explosion shattered the stillness. Someone had bombed the guidestones, nearly toppling one of the massive panels. Security footage captured a silver sedan fleeing the scene, but no arrests were ever made. The damage proved too extensive to repair, and by 2024, the entire structure had been demolished, erased as mysteriously as it had appeared. Georgia officials cited safety concerns, but the move only fueled suspicions. Had someone decided the guidestone's message was too dangerous to remain? Or was their destruction the final act in a decades-long performance art piece? What lingers isn't just the question of who built the guidestones, but why they resonated so deeply across generations. Were they a sincere warning, an elaborate hoax, or something in between? Unlike typical conspiracy fodder, the stone's physical presence lent them an air of authority, their weight, their permanence, their cold granite certainty. Now that they're gone, we're left with only photographs and fragments, wondering if we dismantled a puzzle just as we were beginning to understand its shape. The guidestones challenged us to consider who gets to write the rules for humanity's future, and whether those instructions might already be carved in stone somewhere else, waiting to be found. On a sweltering December morning in 1948, beachgoers in Adelaide, Australia, stumbled upon a scene straight out of a spy novel. A well-dressed man lay lifeless against the seawall at Somerton Beach, his legs crossed casually as if he'd simply dozed off. But the clues left behind turned this into one of history's most baffling cold cases. The labels had been carefully cut from his clothing. No wallet, no identification, just a handful of bizarre items, an unused train ticket, a half-smoked cigarette, and tucked deep in his pocket, a tiny scrap of paper torn from a book. On it, a single phrase, Tamam Shud, Persian for ended or finished. This was the Somerton man, a figure so enigmatic that even 7 decades later, his true identity sparks furious debate. When authorities traced the scrap to a rare copy of Omar Khayyam's Rubaiyat, they found a phone number and another cryptic string of letters, W.R. Goabab. Was it a code, a cipher? Cryptographers and intelligence agencies pored over it for years, but the sequence defied decryption. Then came the whispers of espionage. The Cold War was heating up, and Australia had become a hotbed for Soviet and British intelligence activity. The Somerton man's polished shoes and tailored suit suggested wealth or status, yet his lack of dental records, many teeth were missing, hinted at someone who deliberately erased his past. The most tantalizing lead pointed to a local nurse named Jessica Thompson, whose phone number matched the one in the book. When shown a plaster cast of the dead man's face, she reportedly reacted with visible shock, but to her dying day, she refused to admit she knew him. Decades later, her own daughter came forward with a bombshell. Her mother had confessed to knowing the man, saying only, "He was a spy and I was told to keep quiet." Now science is peeling back the layers of this decades-old puzzle. In 2022, researchers exhumed the Somerton man's body, extracting DNA that revealed a startling genetic link to living relatives in the United States. Initial findings suggest he might have been Carl Charles Webb, a Melbourne-born electrical engineer who vanished around the time of the Somerton man's death. But inconsistencies linger. Webb's family had no known ties to intelligence work, and his disappearance was never reported. Even with a potential name, the central mysteries endure. Why was Webb, if it was him, on that beach? What does Tamam Shud truly signify? And most chilling of all, was his death a suicide as the official record states, or something far darker? The code remains unbroken, the nurse's secrets died with her, and the Somerton man's elegantly composed corpse continues to challenge everything we think we know about identity, espionage, and the shadows cast by history's unanswered questions. Deep in the jungles of Costa Rica's Diquis Delta, a series of ancient stone spheres lie scattered across the landscape like marbles dropped by a giant. Ranging in size from a few inches to over 6 feet in diameter, these perfectly round artifacts, some weighing up to 16 tons, were carved with such precision that modern engineers still debate how they were made. Discovered in the 1930s when the United Fruit Company cleared land for banana plantations, the spheres instantly captivated archaeologists. But their purpose remains as enigmatic as the hands that shaped them. The craftsmanship defies explanation. Made from gabbro, limestone, or sandstone, each sphere displays near-flawless symmetry, with surfaces smoothed to a degree that suggests advanced understanding of geometry and stoneworking. Some researchers propose the builders used a combination of heat and rapid cooling to fracture the rock before painstakingly pecking and grinding it into shape. Others speculate they employed wooden frames or slings to rotate the stones during carving, achieving their roundness through meticulous measurement. The most baffling detail, many were transported miles from their quarries through dense rainforest, a logistical nightmare without wheels or draft animals. Theories about their function spiral from the practical to the celestial. Local legends speak of the spheres as gifts from the gods or relics from the lost city of Atlantis. More grounded hypotheses suggest they were status symbols for tribal chiefs, territorial markers, or even trading commodities, but the most compelling idea ties them to astronomy. Several spheres align with celestial events when placed in specific formations, leading experts to suspect they functioned as a massive calendar or observatory. At the archaeological site of Finca 6, for example, groupings of spheres correspond to the positions of certain stars during solstices, an arrangement that would have helped the Dikwis people track agricultural cycles or religious ceremonies. Yet the mystery deepens when you consider the cultural context. The spheres date back to the Chiriqui period between 800 and 1500 AD, a time when Costa Rica served as a crossroads between Mesoamerican and Andean civilizations. Some bear petroglyphs resembling symbols found in Mayan or Incan art, hinting at shared knowledge systems, but unlike pyramids or temples, these objects resist easy categorization. Were they sacred objects, political tools, or something else entirely? Modern threats add urgency to the puzzle. Looters and urban expansion have displaced many spheres from their original locations, erasing potential clues about their arrangement. UNESCO has declared 4 sites World Heritage Zones, but hundreds more remain unprotected. Each displaced sphere isn't just a stolen artifact, it's a missing piece of a code we're still struggling to crack. The stone spheres of Costa Rica challenge our assumptions about pre-Columbian cultures. They remind us that sophistication isn't always measured in towering monuments or written records. Sometimes it's hidden in perfect curves and silent alignments, waiting for us to notice the genius encoded in stone. Los Angeles in January 1947 was a city of glittering dreams and dark secrets, but nothing could prepare the public for the horror that would unfold on a quiet sidewalk in Leimert Park. On the morning of January 15th, a local resident discovered the bisected body of 22-year-old Elizabeth Short, posed with grotesque precision in a vacant lot. The crime scene photos alone would have seared the case into infamy. Short's body drained of blood, her face slashed into a haunting Glasgow smile, and her torso severed cleanly at the waist. But it was the media frenzy that transformed this tragedy into the legend of the Black Dahlia, a nickname borrowed from a noir film, though Short herself had no known connection to it. From the outset, the investigation was a circus. The LAPD received over 50 confessions, most from attention seekers capitalizing on the headlines. Suspects ranged from opportunistic drifters to powerful figures like Dr. George Hodel, a physician whose own son later accused him based on cryptic tape recordings and alleged connections to surrealist circles. Then there was the unsettling theory involving a surgical scalpel. The precision of the cuts suggested medical training, yet no definitive proof ever surfaced. Even Orson Welles found himself under scrutiny when rumors linked the killing to a mock crime scene staged for a magic show he'd attended. What makes the Black Dahlia case endure isn't just its brutality, it's the way it holds up a mirror to Hollywood's underbelly. Short's life became fodder for sensationalized myths that she was a call girl, an aspiring starlet, or a doomed temptress. In truth, she was a transient waitress, moving between unpaid rents and fleeting friendships, her letters revealing a young woman grasping for stability. The media's lurid caricatures obscured the real tragedy, a vulnerable person erased twice over, first by violence, then by myth-making. Modern forensic re-examinations have only deepened the mystery. In 1923, criminologists applied geographic profiling to Short's last known movements, pinpointing hotspots near downtown's gritty Biltmore Hotel. Others combed through newly unsealed files, finding cryptic notes sent to newspapers, one containing a list of names written in glue, another with the chilling postscript, "Here's Dahlia's belongings." Yet the evidence remains as fragmented as the victim's story. The Black Dahlia murder endures because it's more than a cold case, it's a parable about obsession. The detectives who worked it were consumed. One reportedly kept files in his garage until his death. Armchair sleuths still dissect every detail, from the killer's possible art world influences to the eerie parallels between Short's posing and Man Ray's surrealist photographs. But beneath the theories lies a simpler, darker truth. Some mysteries refuse resolution, not because the clues aren't there, but because the answers are too monstrous to fit into any narrative we'd recognize. Elizabeth Short's death became a spectacle, but her story remains a wound, one that still bleeds into our collective imagination, demanding we look even when we'd rather turn away. Among the fragile 2,000-year-old Dead Sea Scrolls discovered in the caves of Qumran, one stands apart not for its spiritual wisdom but for what it might unlock. Unlike the other scrolls filled with biblical texts and sectarian writings, the Copper Scroll is a cryptic treasure map, listing 64 locations where unimaginable riches from Jerusalem's Second Temple were supposedly hidden. Etched onto sheets of corroded copper, a deliberate choice to ensure its durability, this scroll reads like an ancient inventory of gold, silver, priestly vestments, and sacred artifacts, with amounts so precise they'd total billions in today's currency. But here's the twist: no one's ever found a single item from its list. Deciphering the scroll's clues feels like stepping into an archaeological thriller. Its language differs starkly from the other Dead Sea Scrolls, sprinkled with Greek and Roman terms instead of traditional Hebrew. Some entries are maddeningly vague, referencing landmarks like the cistern at the end of the Eastern Conduit or the ruins of the Valley of Achor. Others offer bewildering specifics, such as 17 talents of silver in the third terrace of the Cave of the Pillar. Modern treasure hunters have combed everything from Jerusalem's underground tunnels to the hills of Jordan, following these breadcrumbs. Yet every excavation turns up empty, leaving scholars to wonder: was this a genuine inventory, an elaborate hoax, or perhaps a decoy to misdirect Roman looters during the siege of Jerusalem in 70 AD? Theories about the scroll's fate are as divisive as they are dramatic. Some scholars argue the treasures were found long ago, possibly by the Romans themselves, and the scroll is a relic of a plunder already completed. Others believe the loot was recovered by Jewish rebels who hid it anew, leaving the Copper Scroll as a red herring. Then there's the tantalizing possibility that the treasures remain exactly where the scroll describes, but centuries of earthquakes, erosion, and urban development have obscured the landmarks beyond recognition. A few even suggest the metals listed weren't literal treasure but coded references to spiritual wealth, meant to be interpreted symbolically by a select few. Technology has injected new life into the hunt. Ground-penetrating radar and LiDAR scans have been deployed to peer beneath the ruins of Qumran and the Judean desert, while AI algorithms attempt to cross-reference the scroll's descriptions with ancient geography. In 1925, researchers uncovered a previously unknown cave near the Dead Sea with empty storage niches, fueling speculation that it once held treasures later moved or stolen. But the Copper Scroll guards its secrets fiercely. Every potential breakthrough dissolves into ambiguity. Every promising lead dead ends in the desert sands. What makes this scroll so compelling isn't just the lure of gold. It's the window it offers into a world under siege. Written during the Jewish revolt, it captures the desperation of a people trying to save their sacred objects from destruction. Whether the treasures exist or not, the copper scroll endures as a testament to faith, survival, and the lengths humans will go to preserve what they hold dear. And so the search continues, not just for riches, but for the truth behind history's most enigmatic treasure map. On a chilly November afternoon in 1970, hikers exploring Norway's Isdalen Valley stumbled upon a scene straight out of a Cold War thriller. A woman's badly burned body lay partially covered by rocks, her hands and face charred beyond recognition. Nearby, investigators found a stash of peculiar belongings, multiple passports under different names, a silver wig, coded notebooks filled with cryptic notations, and a half-empty bottle of scent. Hallvard Liqueur, an odd choice for a presumed suicide. This was the Isdal woman, a figure so shrouded in mystery that decades later, no one knows who she truly was or why she met such a grim end. What immediately set this case apart was the chilling precision of her erased identity. Labels had been cut from her clothing, serial numbers were scraped off her luggage. Even the maker's marks on her watch and sunglasses had been meticulously removed. But the most tantalizing clue lay in those notebooks pages filled with strings of letters and numbers, later confirmed to be a sophisticated code. Cryptographers managed to crack portions of it, revealing dates, locations, and abbreviations like LHR for London Heathrow Airport. The entries mapped out a trail across Europe, flights to Paris, meetings in Brussels, train rides to Geneva, all under aliases. Here was a woman who moved like a ghost, slipping between identities with ease. Theories about her origins and mission spiral as widely as the travel logs in her notebooks. Some investigators believe she was a spy, possibly working for an Eastern Bloc intelligence agency during the height of Cold War tensions. Norway's proximity to Soviet submarine activity made it a hotspot for espionage, and her movements aligned suspiciously with known intelligence hubs. Others speculate she was a defector, hunted down and silenced. A handful of researchers even propose she was part of a smuggling ring, using her coded notes to track illicit transactions. But there's a haunting inconsistency. If she was a professional operative, why leave behind such careless traces like unmailed postcards or receipts tucked in a purse? Forensic science has offered fragments of answers, but never the full picture. Isotope analysis of her teeth suggested she grew up near the French-German border, possibly in the Alsace region. Her stomach contents revealed traces of phenobarbital, a sedative that could indicate poisoning or suicide. Yet the burns covering her body were inconsistent with a typical fire. Accelerant residue hinted at a deliberate, almost ritualistic attempt to destroy evidence. The coroner's verdict, probable suicide, felt like a placeholder, a way to close a file that refused to make sense. The case took another bizarre turn when a witness came forward, recalling a woman matching the Isdal woman's description at a Bergen hotel weeks earlier. She'd requested a room away from other guests, changed her name daily, and burned papers in her fireplace. Staff noted she spoke multiple languages fluently but seemed deeply uneasy, as if expecting to be found. Was this paranoia or the behavior of someone who knew the stakes of her game? Modern efforts to solve the mystery have only deepened its complexity. In 2017, Norwegian police exhumed her body for DNA analysis, hoping genetic genealogy could finally put a name to the unknown woman. The results traced distant relatives to Germany and France, but no definitive identity emerged. Meanwhile, amateur sleuths continued dissecting her coded notebooks, searching for patterns that might unlock the truth. Some believe the key lies in the timing of her movements coinciding with NATO exercises or diplomatic summits. Others think the answer is hidden in the cultural clues she left behind, like the distinctive St. Halvard liqueur, a drink tied to Oslo's patron saint. What lingers isn't just the question of who the Istel woman was, but why her story resonates so powerfully. In an age of digital footprints and facial recognition, the idea of a person vanishing so completely, erasing herself even in death, feels almost impossible. She exists in the liminal space between fact and legend, a reminder that some identities are built to dissolve, leaving behind only whispers and ashes. The Istel woman's enigma endures not because the clues are absent, but because they lead everywhere and nowhere at once, a labyrinth with no center and no way out. Southeast of Japan, where the Pacific Ocean churns with unseen forces, lies a stretch of water so treacherous it's earned the name the Devil's Sea. Much like the Bermuda Triangle, this area near the Izu Islands has swallowed ships and planes without a trace, fueling tales of supernatural forces lurking beneath the waves. But unlike its Atlantic counterpart, the Devil's Sea, or Ma no Yumi as locals call it, has a far more volatile foundation. The Ring of Fire, where tectonic plates clash and the ocean floor is a minefield of active volcanoes and methane vents. The disappearances here read like a mariner's nightmare. In the 1950s, multiple Japanese research vessels investigating the region vanished without distress signals, including the famed Kayo Maru No. 5, which carried 31 crew members into oblivion. Fishermen speak of sudden, unexplained whirlpools and freak waves that appear out of calm seas, while pilots report compasses spinning wildly as if the very laws of physics unravel. The Japanese government even officially labeled the zone dangerous in the mid-20th century, a rare admission that hints at something beyond ordinary maritime hazards. Science offers compelling explanations. The seabed here is riddled with underwater volcanoes, some erupting without warning and releasing pockets of carbon dioxide that can lower water density, causing ships to lose buoyancy and sink almost instantly. Methane hydrates trapped beneath the seafloor occasionally rupture in massive bubbles, creating deadly turbulence. Add to that the region's frequent typhoons and the Kuroshio Current, one of the strongest ocean currents on Earth, and you have a perfect storm of natural hazards. Even modern sonar struggles to map the area accurately due to shifting underwater topography and magnetic anomalies caused by volcanic rock, but folklore weaves a darker narrative. Ancient legends describe the Devil's Sea as the domain of Yumi Bazu, a monstrous black figure said to rise from the waves to capsize ships. Some believe the area is a gateway to the mythical lost continent of Mu, a Pacific Atlantis said to have dragged its doomed civilization beneath the waters. Even today, fishermen avoid certain coordinates, whispering about ghost lights flickering beneath the surface, a phenomenon scientists attribute to bioluminescent plankton or volcanic gases, though that does little to ease superstitions. The line between fact and legend blurs when you examine historical records. Edo period texts recount entire fleets disappearing in the region, long before modern technology could explain such disasters. Then there's the eerie case of the USS Cyclops, a U.S. Navy ship that vanished in the Bermuda Triangle in 1918, but was later theorized by some to have drifted off course only to meet its fate in the Devil's Sea. Could these two infamous zones share more than just a reputation? Both sit atop volatile geological features, both disrupt navigational instruments, and both defy easy answers. What makes the Devil's Sea uniquely unsettling is how visibly alive it is. Unlike the Bermuda Triangle's relatively stable seabed, this region's underwater volcanoes constantly reshape the landscape, creating new hazards overnight. In 2016, a volcanic island named Nishinoshima erupted so violently it merged with a neighboring island, altering charts in real time. The ocean here doesn't just hide its secrets, it actively destroys the evidence. Yet the most haunting question isn't why ships disappear, but why we're so determined to mythologize their loss. Perhaps it's easier to blame restless spirits or alien abductions than to confront the ocean's raw, indifferent power. The Devil's Sea reminds us that some corners of the Earth still operate beyond human understanding, where nature's violence and our own imaginations collide, leaving us to navigate the narrow strait between what we can prove and what we dare to believe. The afternoon of December 5, 1945 began like any other training mission for Flight 195 U.S. Navy Tibium Avenger bombers lifting off from Fort Lauderdale's Naval Air Station into clear Florida skies. Led by seasoned instructor Lieutenant Charles Taylor, the 13 crewmen were set to practice bombing runs over the nearby Bahamas before returning to base. But what should have been a routine exercise spiraled into one of aviation's most infamous tragedies. 90 minutes after takeoff, tower operators intercepted increasingly frantic radio transmissions. Taylor reported his compasses had malfunctioned, leaving him disoriented over open water. "Both my compasses are out," he radioed, voice crackling with tension. "I'm sure I'm in the Florida Keys, but I don't know how far down." This critical moment exposes the first layer of the mystery. Flight 19 wasn't lost in some remote corner of the ocean. They were somewhere between the Bahamas and Florida's coastline, a region dotted with islands and frequented by ships. Under normal circumstances, visual landmarks or radio triangulation should have corrected their course, but the weather was turning. By late afternoon, turbulent seas and thickening clouds reduced visibility, while worsening radio static made communication spotty. Tower operators strained to guide the squadron home, but Taylor, convinced he'd drifted far south over the Gulf of Mexico, insisted on heading northeast, a decision that may have taken them deeper into the Atlantic's vast emptiness. What happened next would cement Flight 19's place in Bermuda Triangle lore. As darkness fell, rescue teams launched a massive search operation. Among them was the Martin Mariner flying boat PBM-5 BU-NO 59225, an aircraft specifically designed for maritime patrol. Shockingly, this rescue plane also vanished after a single garbled transmission, leaving no wreckage or distress calls. The Navy's official investigation pointed to pilot error compounded by instrument failure, noting Taylor had a history of navigational mistakes in the Pacific. But the absence of debris, no life rafts, no oil slicks, left room for darker speculation. Theories attempting to explain the disappearances range from the plausible to the fantastically unhinged. Some aviation experts highlight the Avenger's notorious reputation for ditching poorly in water. A single rough wave could send the heavy bombers plunging before crews escaped. Others cite the Bermuda Triangle's magnetic anomalies, which might disrupt sensitive WW2-era compasses. Then there's the methane hydrate hypothesis. Explosive gas bubbles rising from the seabed could theoretically destabilize aircraft, though no physical evidence supports this. Conspiracists naturally whisper a BOUT Chinese letter, or time warps. But the most compelling angle involves the Martin Mariner. Known as flying gas tanks for their volatile fuel systems, one spark could have triggered a mid-air explosion, scattering debris over miles of ocean. Flight 19's legacy isn't just about vanished airmen. It's about how a straightforward tragedy morphed into myth. The Navy's original report was quietly amended to list the cause as unknown, ensuring endless debate. Decades later, plane wrecks discovered off Florida's coast were misidentified as the Avengers before being debunked. Each false hope reignited questions. How could 5 bombers and a rescue plane dissolve without a trace? The answer might be simpler than we'd like. The ocean, even in relatively shallow waters, is a master of concealment. Sunken planes become coral-encrusted relics, their aluminum skins scattered by currents. Flight 19's true resting place could be just beyond our search grids, waiting for some chance storm or sonar sweep to reveal its secrets, not as a supernatural oddity, but as a stark reminder of nature's indifference to human plans. What lingers isn't fear of the triangle's supposed malevolence, but the haunting intimacy of those final transmissions. Taylor's last words, "All planes close up tight. We'll have to ditch unless landfall when the first plane drops below 10 gallons. We all go down together. Capture not terror, but grim determination." These weren't rookies, they were professionals facing the unimaginable, their voices a fragile thread between order and oblivion. That tension between the explicable and the eternal unknown is why Flight 19 endures. Not as a ghost story, but as a cautionary tale about how easily confidence can unravel when the horizon offers no answers. In the summer of 1997, hydrophones stationed deep in the Pacific Ocean, originally placed by the U.S. Navy to track Soviet submarines, picked up something extraordinary, a sound. Not just any sound, but a low-frequency pulse so powerful it reverberated across 3,000 miles of ocean, detectable by multiple sensors over weeks. Scientists at the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration dubbed it the bloop, a name that belies its eerie, almost alien quality. Clocking in at around 1 minute in duration, this noise descended to frequencies barely within human hearing range, resembling the deep groan of a colossal underwater creature or the distant echo of something unfathomably large stirring in the abyss. Theories about its origin split sharply between the mundane and the fantastical. On one side, oceanographers point to icequakes, massive fractures in Antarctic ice shelves, as the most plausible explanation. When glaciers calve or crack, they generate tremors that can travel vast distances through water, sometimes matching the bloop's acoustic profile. In 2005, researchers noted similarities between the bloop and recordings of ice detaching from glaciers, bolstering this argument. Yet skeptics highlight inconsistencies. The bloop's frequency pattern wasn't a perfect match for known icequake signatures, and its epicenter traced to a remote point off South America's coast far from major ice activity at the time. Then there's the more tantalizing possibility. Could the bloop have been biological? The frequency range overlaps with sounds produced by marine megafauna like blue whales whose songs can carry for hundreds of miles. But the bloop dwarfed even those recordings in raw amplitude. Some marine biologists speculate about an undiscovered species, perhaps a giant squid of unprecedented size or another deep-sea behemoth lurking beyond our knowledge. The idea isn't entirely fringe. The ocean remains 95% unexplored, and history is littered with examples of once mythical creatures like the giant squid, later proven real. Still, no known animal could produce a sound of that magnitude without leaving other traces, no carcasses, no sightings, no corroborating evidence. The mystery deepens when you consider the bloop's unique propagation. Unlike most oceanic sounds which dissipate predictably, this one exhibited strange resonance patterns, almost as if it had been amplified by underwater topography or temperature layers. Could it have been distorted by chance, a confluence of currents and pressure zones turning an ordinary event into something extraordinary? Or was there something inherently unusual about the source itself? Technology has since ruled out some options. By 2012, improved hydrophone networks and better understanding of ice dynamics led NOAA to quietly reclassify the bloop as likely ice-related. But even their official statement leaves room for doubt, noting that no single ice event has ever been definitively linked to it. Meanwhile, the sound's spectral fingerprint remains distinct from any other recorded phenomenon, a ghost in the dataset that refuses to be fully explained. What lingers isn't just the question of what made the bloop, it's why the idea of an unknown leviathan captivates us so deeply. The ocean's depths are Earth's last great frontier, a place where the line between science and myth still blurs. The bloop taps into that primal curiosity, a reminder that even in an age of satellites and submersibles, the sea keeps secrets. Whether ice or creature, the truth is out there, echoing somewhere in the dark, waiting for the next hydrophone to listen. History has a way of toying with our certainty, leaving behind riddles that refuse to be solved no matter how many centuries pass or how advanced our technology becomes. What makes these 30 mysteries so endlessly compelling isn't just the unanswered questions, it's the way they expose the limits of our knowledge. For every ancient artifact like the Antikythera Mechanism that reshapes our understanding of human innovation, there's a case like the Isdal woman's coded notebooks, reminding us how easily identities can dissolve into the shadows. These aren't just footnotes in textbooks, they're gaping holes in the narrative of our past, forcing us to confront how much we still don't and may never know. Think about it, the Voynich Manuscript defies the world's best codebreakers, while the Copper Scroll taunts treasure hunters with locations just specific enough to feel real yet just vague enough to remain untraceable. The Tao's hum plays tricks on perception, existing as both a shared experience and a scientific anomaly, while the dancing plague of Strasbourg blurs the line between mass hysteria and something far stranger. These puzzles challenge more than our curiosity, they challenge our assumptions. If a 2,000-year-old device could model planetary motion with precision, what other advanced knowledge have we lost to time? If an entire legion like Rome's 9th could vanish without a trace, how fragile are even the mightiest institutions? But the real magic lies in how these mysteries resist closure. The more we investigate, the more they fractal into new questions. Take the Green Children of Woolpit. Were they refugees, poison victims, or something beyond our modern frameworks? Each theory opens another door, proving that history is never static. Even science, for all its rigor, hits walls like the bloop's haunting frequency, which could be ice or something unimaginable lurking in the deep. That tension between the explainable and the elusive is what keeps us digging, analyzing, and debating. This is where you come in. Maybe you've stood beneath the Nazca Lines and have a theory about their celestial alignments. Perhaps you've pored over zodiac ciphers late at night, convinced you've spotted a pattern everyone else missed. Or maybe you're like the researchers still scouring Oak Island, believing the next shovel strike could rewrite history. That's the beauty of these enigmas, their collective projects inviting everyone to contribute a piece. So drop your wildest theories in the comments. Did the Mary Celeste's crew encounter a methane bubble? Was the Somerton man a discarded spy? The conversation never really ends. And if today's journey through the unexplained left you hungry for more, don't forget to subscribe. We're just scratching the surface. There are lost cities waiting to be uncovered, cryptic manuscripts begging to be decoded, and phenomena science still can't name. The past isn't done surprising us, and neither are we. After all, the next great historical revelation might be hiding in plain sight, just waiting for someone to look at it sideways. Will that someone be?